Hello everybody, this is Kai Marin, and today we're going to be talking about Sanai Takaichi, who is set to become the very first female Prime Minister of Japan. Now I know what you must be thinking. Surely this is a victory for liberalism, for feminism, and that's what I was thinking too. But if you scratch beneath the surface, it seems to be a little more complex, let's say, a bit unexpected. So anyways, she is now the leader of the Liberal Democratic Party after an internal vote, and that's just what they call their conservative party for whatever reason. But anyway, so we'll go down here. Yeah, Takaichi belongs to the hardline faction of the LDP, which believe that the reason the LDP support has imploded is because it lost touch with its right-wing DNA. Thinks she's in a good position to gain right-wing voters, but at the expense of wider popular appeal. And this part's a little concerning, but we'll talk about that in a bit, I guess. Takaichi has been a long-time admirer of Britain's first female Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher. She's now ever closer to fulfilling her Iron Lady ambition. Takaichi is a staunch conservative who's long opposed legislation allowing women to keep their maiden names after marriage, saying it is against tradition. She is also against same-sex marriage. A protege of the late former leader Shinzo Abe, Takaichi has vowed to bring back his economic vision known as Abenomics, which involves high fiscal spending and cheap borrowing. The LDP veteran is hawkish on security and aims to revise Japan's pacifist constitution. She's also a regular visitor of the controversial Yasukuni Shrine, where Japan's war dead, including some convicted war criminals, are memorialized. So overall, surprisingly based. And I'll be the first to say that there aren't any based women, or really, if there are based women, it's like 1% at most. And this is especially true when it comes to politicians, all right? And I'll give an example later. But I mean, to be fair, if we were ever to get an actually based female politician, it probably would be from a country like Japan. Anyways, though, we'll go through some more specific stuff. So as you can see, Sanai Takaichi, friend of the late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, will become Japan's next Prime Minister after winning an internal party vote. Takaichi previously wrote a blog recommending a book titled Hitler's Election Strategy, which stated voters you cannot persuade should be eliminated. After significant backlash, the book was pulled from shelves 2 months later. Takaichi is considered a hard-right nationalist. She is an advocate for strict immigration policies, the rearmament of Japan, opposes gay marriage, and is against a potential female emperor. So we'll go into some other stuff. So here's a clip from her talking of, hardcore nationalist. Her plans to stop immigration and deport all illegals. So, actually, let me lower the volume, but I'll just dub over this. As for me, I want to have a calm, mutually considerate relationship with foreigners. How we can live together in such a way, I intend to reconsider it completely. I plan to think about it from zero again, because year after year, the culture between us and everything else is so very different, yet people are being brought in all together. To keep bringing them in this policy, we must pause and reconsider it. Those who come with economic motives and claim to be refugees, such people will be properly sent home. Also regarding those who overstay illegally, they too will be strictly required to obey the law. As for me, I want to have a calm... Oh, it's replaying. Honestly, this is kind of massive. I mean, here in the West, we clamor for, immigration moratoriums. And maybe we get a little bit of lip service from politicians, but nothing ever happens, And here she is straight up advocating, yeah, I'm going to stop, I'm planning on stopping all immigration, deporting all the illegals. I mean, honestly, this is shockingly based. This is way more than we could ever expect from Trump or, any other, Trump-esque politician from anywhere in the West, I mean, who knows? Maybe the polls are still based, but anyways, though. And look, the whole thing, though, let's see, anything else cool? Yeah, this is funny. Japan's new Chudette Prime Minister was literally Misato when she was young. Yeah, the resemblance is uncanny, I gotta say. Anyways, though. Oh, man, this guy's got, a whole essay here. Anyways, though, but the whole thing is that this is... A huge part of this is in... I guess we'll talk about this. Did you hear Japan elected their first woman prime minister? That's amazing. A huge win for women's rights. She supports rearming the Japanese military for offensive purposes, acquiring newts, further restricting immigration, and wrote a blog admiring Hitler. Man, that's good stuff. Anyways, though, like I said, though, but like I was talking about, this is this kind of anti-immigration movement that's cropping up in Japan. It's in response to a lot of the migration that's been happening, and relatively speaking, it isn't even much. I mean, basically every Western country is facing, white minority status. And then Japan gets like 100,000, and it's the end of the world. And I gotta say, good on them, okay? You shouldn't have any tolerance for this kind of stuff. So, like I said, we'll start with this video. Yeah, so this is in Japan, by the way. This is in Japan. And you've got all these, whatever the fuck, waving their flags. This is the whole thing. And Japan actually is getting hit pretty hard by immigration. I went to Japan actually a while back, and it was worse than I was expecting. Even the Indian thing. Like, the Indian thing is not a meme. They're literally, like, freaking rats. Because it's so funny, but when I was in Japan, tons of convenience stores were staffed by Indians for some reason. And for whatever reason, it was the worst in Nara. In Nara, it was almost impossible to find a convenience store that wasn't staffed by Indians. It was ridiculous. But yeah, so Japan is already getting pretty hit hard by this. And this is sort of in response to, of course, Japan's falling birth rate. And this is a phenomenon across the entire Western world. You can debate why. I personally think it's because of feminism. And weirdly enough, Google's AI agrees with me on this. But anyways, though, this has caused a labor shortage. Although I don't really think a labor shortage is the end of the world or anything. And honestly, it's all kind of stupid because, I mean, Japan's already kind of overpopulated. I mean, Japan's, a pretty small country that they cram 120 million people into. All right, it's already kind of bursting. But anyways, though. So as you can see, Japan will take 50,000 skilled, semi-skilled personnel from India. Japan invites 820,000 Nigerians, other foreign workers. So Japan's already getting hit hard by the immigration, and it's just started. And this has caused, anti-foreigner sentiments, and politicians are on the rise. Rightfully so. Japan is for the Japanese. And really, it's not worth it to torpedo, your country, your culture, your people, just to keep the GDP rising infinitely. All right? And that doesn't even work necessarily. Anyways, though, let's go through some more of this. But yeah, so it is getting rough. More and more of these foreign, communities are popping up. They're getting much bigger. And hopefully they all get sent back. These people have no right to be in Japan. They have no place in Japan at all. Anyways, though. But besides that, oh yeah, but there's a certain group of people who are pretty skeptical of her. As you can see, Jack Adelstein wrote, "The rise of Japan's female Trump, why Takaichi Sanai is the worst thing to happen to Japanese democracy since Abe 2.0. Yeah, whatever you say, Mr. Adelstein. But anyways, though, and a big thing is that I feel like this is also in response to Japan's last prime minister, Shigeru Ishiba. So Japan's wants to import millions of Africans and Kurds because he believes his Christian faith demands to make Japan tolerant. Japan will laugh, cry, and sweat together with the people of Africa. I guess there's no subs, but yeah. So Japan's last prime minister, who was a Christian, got into massive hot water for being super pro-immigration, to the point where he actually had to resign. That's how bad the backlash was. And by the way, this is for like a few 100,000, maybe a couple million at the absolute most. And Japan is already responding so strongly. Compare that to the West. Every Western country is facing, ethnic cleansing, possible extinction in the future, minority status at the least. And what's the response? Not much at all. Basically nothing. Yeah, here, people protesting in the streets over this. Prime Minister Ishiba, you are the traitor. You are the cancer in Japan. Get out of Japan right now. Resign, Prime Minister Ishiba. This is the whole thing. They went down hard on this guy. And even here, yeah, here's another one. More of these new Japanese. Yeah, these are the new Japanese. And look, this is ultimately what they're trying to stop. And this is... But yeah, my whole point, though, is like I said, Japan is just experiencing these issues that, we in the West have been experiencing for decades. And their response has been immediate. Their response has been immediate, and it's been brutal, which it has to be to stop this. Because if they let this immigration go on as it has in the West, then they will be facing extinction too. And I sort of want to talk about why this is. Like I said, though, Shigeru Ishiba, he's a Christian. And I think this is actually a big piece of the puzzle because... Yeah, I think it's because a big part of it is just culture. So I want to sort of talk about... Let's talk about Shintoism first, all right? So Shintoism is Japan's, traditional religion. It's their official religion. And I won't go into too much detail, but I do want to talk about Emperor Jimmu, who is the legendary first emperor of Japan. And most interestingly enough, it should be here somewhere. Oh, it's like right at the top. Here it is. In Japanese mythology, he was a descendant of the sun goddess Amaterasu through her grandson Ninigi, as well as a descendant of the storm god Susanoo. And by the way, this is the guy who is believed to be, the first Japanese emperor, the descendant of all the emperors of Japan. And he was a literal demigod. If you are like a true Shintoist, I guess, right? If you actually, in their religion, it literally states that their emperor is a demigod, a descendant of the sun goddess and the storm god, and the storm god. And you can extend, and I bring this up because that sort of creates a much different kind of worldview. It creates a very sort of ethnocentric worldview, the Japanese people, their emperor is effectively divine. That certainly elevates the Japanese people above, their contemporaries 100%. It completely reframes their worldview. And I'm not saying, and like I said, this is in stark contrast to Christianity. Because Christianity, meanwhile, is a universal religion. No one group is superior to any other, unlike, say, no one group is superior to any other group, right? We're all equal. So as you can see here, Galatians 3:28, there is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor is there male and female, for you are all one in Jesus Christ. Leviticus 19:34, the foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born, love them as yourself, for you were foreigners in Egypt, I am the Lord your God. And Matthew 28:19, therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you, and surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. And as you can see, this is you can see how this is sort of materializes. With, say, Catholicism is a great example, but you see this behavior in Protestants too, and even Orthodox, although to a much lesser extent. Pope Leo, after Trump critique, urges Catholics to help immigrants. The Pope, who did not single out any country for its treatment of migrants, called on Catholics to open our arms and hearts to them, welcoming them as brothers and sisters. This is from Pope Francis. Driving away migrants is a grave sin. Urge for global solidarity, safe migration pathways, and efforts to combat human trafficking during his general audience on August 28th. And look, you can shit on the Pope all day. I certainly will. But this worldview is derived from Christian beliefs. There is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free. The foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. Go make disciples of all nations. Like I said, Christianity, it's a universal religion. All people are equal before God. And, it's our responsibility to try and convert the entire world. And that's just... And that kind of worldview, when taken to its logical extreme, effectively leads to ethnic suicide. Because you're effectively completely throwing out ethnicity, completely throwing out race. And you could say, oh, leftism is a perversion of Christian. And look, and the whole thing is that even though Christianity has been weakening in the West, as a society, our morality is still derived from Christianity. And you can say that leftists pervert Christianity or they're anti-Christian, but I would argue that really they're more so an evolution of Christian morality. Leftism is what you get when you take Christian morals to their extreme. And I bring this up because this is in very stark contrast to Shintoism, which is effectively an ethno-religion. It says the Japanese emperor is literally a god. The Japanese people are sort of more, or even more divine, you could say. This is a religion it's a religion that is exclusive to Japan and the Japanese people. And of course, Japan is more than just Shintoism. There's also the Buddhist influence, of course. And like I said, there's very few actual Shintoists even left in Japan now. But the whole thing is that this was still the religion they followed for centuries. This is the religion they followed for centuries, for millennia. So even if, it's, say, less influential, this is still sort of, it is sort of still a major core part of their beliefs, even if a lot of the society isn't really that religious anymore. So I do find it interesting. And there's also other factors too, like Japan was never hit with the same kind of propaganda the West was. With all this, the West has been hit with tons of propaganda. It says, oh, it's bad to be right-wing or nationalistic. It's bad, all this other kind of stuff. Japan was never really hit by that, and that's part of it too. But I mean, look, I do think a big part of it is just sort of, I guess we have different moral frameworks, So that's my opinion. Like I said, I don't know if this chick's going to save Japan. For all we know, she's going to get it and then completely backpedal on anything. I think that's actually pretty likely. And look, because something like this has happened before. Remember Giorgia Meloni? Oh, she was a super based far-right shudette who's going to stop all the migrants. All right? And funnily enough, she was apparently also an anime fan because she posted anime artwork of herself. Anyway, gets in. Oh, Italian PM Meloni's government to issue 500,000 visas for non-EU workers. Very interesting. Yeah, total, so based. But anyways, though, like I said, we'll have to see what happens. Like I said, the whole reason she's in is because the last prime minister tried to open the floodgates, and he literally couldn't handle, and he literally got so much backlash he was forced to resign. So we'll have to see what... I mean, look, hopefully she does stop all immigration, deport all the illegals. Hopefully she deports, hopefully she deports some of these so-called citizens. That's what the West needs, all right? The West definitely would need to deport a lot of these so-called citizens as well. But anyways, though, we'll see what happens. But it definitely is interesting at the very least. Anyways, though, that's about it for me. Like the video if you enjoyed. Comment your thoughts down below. Subscribe for more content in the future. Thank you guys all for watching, and goodbye.